to the Roundtable podcast hosted on the Roundtable Discord server. Please check out our Twitch, our YouTube, our BitChute, and the Discord server, and also check out our merch. And we have shirts and stuff with different designs made by people in the server. We are here today, and I, Rafi, will be interviewing Agent Bree. So hello and welcome. So I'm excited for this interview, and the topic is complex and simple: the meaning of life. So we'll be getting into what that means for you, Bree. Here. So how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good right now. Thank you for asking. So about that conversation, that question, why I say like it's simple and complex is because I feel like the meaning of life can be very simple, but it also can be very complex at the same time. And so there's a lot. I ask that question to a lot of people, and it means a lot to me. So I thought that that would be the best question to kind of describe who I am and what I would try to be learning from other people as well. So.
Okay, well, how about you try to dive into it? What do you think the meaning of life is, and why is it simple and complex?
I think it can be simple because, like, whatever, something very, very simple things can make you happy. How something tastes, like your favorite place to go, or maybe the favorite route that you take to work or something, like whatever those things are, like I say that that has something to do with the meaning of life, because if that's what, like, if simple things can make you happy, then you'd want to live to experience those things. That's how I would feel. But it can also be a complex thing because sometimes people need an extraordinary amount of, I don't know, devotion or thinking or feeling or about something. Like maybe there's something passionate about, and it's through the depth of their passion that meaning in life arises. So, like, I've talked to a lot of people, like just either briefly or just kind of like how we're talking right now, and everyone always has something different. Some people say it's very simple. Oh, my favorite thing is bacon. Whatever about that makes them feel, that they're really connected with that is, some kind of meaning in their life for them. And so, but with other people, it's much, much, much deeper. Like, I know we got into the topic of, like BLM and all that earlier. But one thing about that is that a lot of those people, the way that they see it on a basic level is they want to promote people. They want to make people feel happy, basically. There's a lot of people where that's all that it is to them. And it's something complex, but it's also something very simple. So you could take this and look at this in any way. So honestly, that's what it means to me, from being complex and simple.
How do you think? So, if you've asked this question to people before, what is the meaning of life, and you've gone into how the simple and complex stuff, how do you find the average answers that people sort of give? How do you find that differs from how you find meaning in your own life?
That it's honestly kind of the same sometimes. Like, I feel that I have things like what makes me have meaning in life is simple and complex. Sometimes it's, like saying hi to people on the street as I walk past them or something, or how well I do my job or whatever, or anything that's just I don't know, more. It's hard to say that like people that there's an average, because there are just things in my life that I feel like I can relate to other people, how, they feel passion and meaning in their lives. So it's hard for me to answer that.
Yeah. Well, I do, I do agree that I definitely do think the things that are most meaningful in life, sometimes are the most simple and the most sort of commonplace things, that bring us the most joy. So it is interesting to say that. Um, but I would like to ask, and this might be a little bit of a strange question. Um, I think like people's definition of meaning is different when they talk in like different ways. So could you kind of describe what you mean by the word meaning when you talk about the meaning of life in this way that like it's sort of the simple things that matter?
Meaning would be how you approach things, that that it's purposeful to you. Like, I mean, you're right, like meaning, the concept of meaning is different for each person. Like, what is meaning even? But I guess meaning would be whatever it speaks to that individual person that has some kind of purpose or pursuit that they're looking for. Like us being here right now, like could be that. So it's meaning, I think, is just perspective, and it could be found in anything or in nothing.
So like when you say like meaning is like the pursuit people go on, that sort of talks on the topic of the more complex meanings, right? The things that are the bigger things and the larger plans that bring people sort of bigger picture things, at least that give them more meaning, like that, like say a career or like an art project or a community developed podcast and Discord like we're on now, like things like that like are sort of the higher things that give you meaning. Do you think because I don't know if I even have an answer for this honestly, but I mean like this whole interview is about your personal takes. Do you find there's either the simple things or the more complex like plans and stuff, the things that bring us meaning, either of those, do you think one's more important than the other? Like, do you think the simple pleasures that bring us meaning are more important than say like a large career that might get us far, or like vice versa, like, or do they both kind of play a role?
I think they absolutely both play a role, and something very interesting about that is that some people, for them to find meaning, they don't identify that as having a career and going on these long, like, adventures in terms of like your career growth and like how you live like that. Some people, their idea of meaning isn't that at all, but there's a lot of people who it is. So I feel like they both absolutely play a factor, but the most important thing is that I guess meaning would be for both of those parties is that whatever they're doing that makes them truly feel like they're happy or that they're content, like I think they'd both be doing that. So I'm not sure. I guess it's like every single freaking person is different. Every single person is different in that. But I just find these to be some of the most interesting kinds of conversations because it really makes you think about yourself.
It does, because it relates to the most personal pursuits that people are going on. And like what you were just saying, sort of relates to the definition of meaning you went over quickly earlier, which is like purposeful pursuits, and like things that bring people sort of meaning. Like I'll say myself, like I went to school for directing and I want to make, films, and I would like to make big budget films. So I definitely think, a complex sort of thing that would bring me a lot of purpose that's a pursuit would be to be able to make a movie, like a large movie with like a large team, so that would be very fantastic, and that would give me a lot of meaning to life. But I definitely think it is important to say, like, even if I do get to that stage, like the simple things still need to be there. Like I would be miserable if I had that, but I had no simple things that brought me meaning, right? So I mean it's a great point to bring up. Yeah, I don't know. We can move on to the three questions you have in your topic, if you'd like. So we sort of talked about the things that bring you meaning day to day, and maybe alluded to things that might bring you meaning in future pursuits. And this is sort of a good way to lead into your first question, which is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And what would be meaningful? What would be meaningful to you to have set up in 5 years?
So very interesting. I love that kind of question. But I just before I really answer that like head on, how I was raised, I had to basically kind of raise myself in a way. So like everything around me is something that, you know, I had put together. So there's a lot of things that I was working on and still am. So like I've never been able to drive yet because I've never had a car, even though I have a license and everything. I was not taught certain things that now I have to teach myself. So there's a big process that's led me to the decisions now that what would make me be in 5 years be where I want to be, in contrast with maybe what you usually see with certain people. So it's 5 years based off of what I had, basically how I started off. So in 5 years from now, I mean, I just started. I mean, some of the people on the server, awesomely, they know that I do loss prevention. So that's basically just retail security. But in that, there's a lot of skills in that that are more universal in that field, basically. So it's not, for me, I don't comprehend it as, oh, this is just retail security. These are the security techniques that are used in basically a variety of other fields and all that. So for me, in 5 years, and this is only my 1 year that I've been doing this, I want something. Maybe it's hard for me to say where, but I want something in that field, but not that. And there's so much potential for that, like in 5 years, that it's hard for me to say. But like I chose that question because in 5 years, like if I know that this is the trajectory that my life is going to go, I know that it will be somewhere in there. So I have a friend, actually. I like Washington D.C., and that's a place that I would like to move. I don't know if I would actually get there in 5 years, but that is some place that I would really really like to go for probably some of my other interests as well. And but I don't know, like 5 years, we're talking about a pandemic right now where we don't know what 2022 is going to look like, basically. So it's hard to say. Like honestly, everyone should really be asking themselves that question at this time in history. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? um but if all is well, and there's nothing major that is stopping everyone's growth, everyone's progress, I'd hope to be in DC doing something further in this field that I'm in right now. That's currently what I'm thinking of, unless, who knows, something in 5 years would change.
Yeah, so DC, do you want to talk about that? What would you want to do if, maybe, I don't know if we have to limit ourselves just to 5 years if you don't think you get there, that quickly or whatever, but once you get set up in DC, best case scenario, what does it look like?
Oh my gosh. Well, truth is telling you, I don't really know what it would look like. I think that you can't simply say that everything's going to be what you would like it to be or what you think it would be, because I found in my own experience that's never true. But there's always elements of that involved, but it's never specifically maybe what you think. Um, I know that, I just know that when I was there, actually literally the day after the riots happened, it took me no, about a little less than 2 days to kind of get information on the streets from certain people, and be invited to some house with some guy and then asking him questions and about certain things. And like, it took me, and it's like, it's a city that has a lot, I think, a lot to do with what people feel in their hearts. What your opinion of it is, there's as many opinions about that city as there are people on the planet, basically. So I find that since there's such a focus on this with most people, even people who aren't even from America, um, that it would be a place that I would like to show almost how I feel about, I guess, country, just by simple actions, kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like what's the meaning to life? It could be simple and complex. That's a simple thing, but a complex thing at the exact same time, depending on how you look at it. So it's there's a lot of, I guess, interpersonal reasons that I have for having an attraction to that city specifically. So I don't know. It's really to see what happens.
Is there anything like career wise that you're hoping to have happen there that is specific to that, or is it just like what it sounds like you think like you could really, thrive in that environment and the career's just going to come with you?
No, I would definitely like to continue. Like, I want to get more experience, specifically in loss prevention right now, so that I completely, like, fully understand what this offers. And then once I have the experience with that, and then you combine, I want to go to college as well, and either go in like law enforcement or something, or what else, intelligence or whatever, and then you have that in combination with 2 to 3 years of this retail security. That's enough experience for someone to hire you on and be like, okay, you have enough experience in this for someone to, like, mold you into something. And it could be, I mean, there's a lot of other positions that are like that. I don't know if I want to do, like policing or something, but I don't really know. Like I say 5 years because I think that's what I'm asked when people ask me. They say, 3 to 5 years, and I told you I don't really do these AMAs a lot, so I don't really know like kind of what questions to even ask myself. But yeah, I just combination of school, more work experience, and then I pick a new job within that work field, basically.
Can I ask why you want to stay in the field of, loss prevention and police work? Like, what's your connection to sort of that field of employment? And, like, you know, like, why do you lean towards loss prevention and moving your way up in loss prevention and learning that, and then potentially moving into law enforcement? Because there's definitely a theme in this,
Oh,
type
there
of
is.
work.
There absolutely is, man. No wonder. Oh,
Yeah.
dude, man, this server gets extremely religious sometimes when we talk about God and all that. I want to say, to really simplify it, and without getting too personal, but I would say it's like a call from God, basically. Like, I'd say that is definitely what I am been for the longest time been pushed to do. And I think, I guess my boss, he wrote me a card, a Christmas card with a present he gave me, and he said something about loving the energy that I bring to the work environment. And that's very interesting because some people would say to me, they're like, so you're the security here? You don't even act like that sometimes. You're so outgoing. And I'm like, oh, but I can also be the opposite too. So it's like something about my personality combined with that atmosphere does something to it that liberates it in a way that really shows people almost like you don't have to fear it, and that there's a release of a lot of judgments, or maybe preconceived fears, or even experienced fears. Also, upon this theme, I'll tell you this. One thing that I have done before in the protests in my city was, there was one time there was a riot going on and they were knocking down a bunch of stuff. And the thing is I marched with them, but at the same time, I also have this position where I should be basically marching with the police. And so it's like, what happened was I was on this lonely street by myself, running towards this protest, and a bunch of police, like the whole unit that was supposed to come and barricade the whole, like, this whole street off, they were with me, and we were actually walking at the same pace, practically marching together. And I started realizing this, and they realized this too, and it was just us. And I went with them. Then once when I started seeing like how they destroyed the city, I started cleaning up the city right in front of them, and they got really excited about that. They said, "Yay, thank you," and they were so happy. And I'm like, in my head, I can see how they see this. And there was locals on the streets, and they were all scared, and they're like, "Oh, we're scared for the city being destroyed." Then once we got to where they were to barricade, I stood on the side of the cops, and then very subtly, I went to the other side with the protesters, and then I'm like, "Oh, I know everyone here," and then I marched with them. So the interesting thing is, like, later in that night, I I was with the people who tossed things over, and I was also with the people who picked them back up. So why I mention all this to kind of answer that question that you gave me was that I find that I don't really think that there's somebody mentioned earlier, there's things we can all get along basically. Sometimes actions not only speak louder than words, but actions are a language. So why I kind of choose to go into this field is, there's a certain kind of energy in my personality that I think just really adds some colors to it, but at the same time, like, also goes with it. So I don't know. It's these are the first times I'm kind of ever saying these things, like really thinking about it. So you are asking questions that I've never really thought deeply about. So thank you.
Well, you can definitely take a second to gather your thoughts, because I think we all want to hear this. This is super interesting. Um, I'm interested about the riot. I mean, that sounds like a crazy story, that you just happen to be walking towards the riot on the same street as all the police who were going there, and you kind of got on their side, and then eventually you switched over to the riot side. I think that's pretty funny. Um, there's a quote by Alan Watts. It goes something like, "The blah blah blah. A certain type of person is the type of person, they would never start a fight, but like if there's a riot, they're the type of person to like join very quickly, And it kind of seems like you were quick to join that riot. But I mean, it also sort of seems like you were conscious of like the political aspect, and like the city and the damages. Like, it doesn't sound like you were sort of on board with the more extreme aspects of the riot, I assume. But that is very interesting.
To actually add something on this, one thing why I go with the protesters, even though they riot, they're just pushing over trash cans and very, very more simple things. But mostly, I'll be honest, they're very organized and they're good about what they do. They usually are pretty clean cut people, and they're very, very organized. So I really appreciate actually how they do their marches. But one thing is that when we go through the towns and everything, man, it's not about it being Black Lives Matter. I think it is, but it's not. Sure, people say, "Oh, you can keep marching and keep marching and keep marching," and change is never going to happen. People have been marching since Martin Luther King, and I'm like, well, even though we're marching, and even if it doesn't get anywhere, and even if there's all these, there's all this talk about what the protests could be or what they really are, or bigger political reasons, or all this shit, that it's like, this goes back to the simplicity also of the meaning of life, is that when people see us go down those streets, they think about justice. A lot of times they're sitting there, I'm telling you, they're on their phone for 4 to 9 hours or something. They're sitting on their TV, or they're doing something that is basically, it's complacent, where they're not thinking about much, or maybe they're even thinking about things that are negative, or maybe they want to think about something that's positive, and they see us go down the street and they think that, wow, our city is alive. Our city has people who have some purpose in it. Not all cities in America do have this, so we have this here. And there are people, they'll come out of their houses, they'll raise their fists like this, and it doesn't. And some people who judge the protests or see it for maybe what it really is or what it could be, and it's like they can't get on the same level. But so many people, it's like it doesn't matter. They want to feel like that somebody cares right in front of them, and whatever the reason is, if people can connect with whatever they're seeing, then what we've done and what the protest has primarily done, even without me involved, all of it matters. Thanks for letting me say that.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's wild. Is that type of, communal awareness of, sort of social causes and like local justice something that you try to aspire to in your security work and potentially police work in the future? Is that something that is related to your interest career-wise?
I think it is and not. Like, it's funny that you ask that. I think it's honestly it's a little bit of both. I think like I would like to do that definitely with policing, but at the same time, there's also, even not in regards to that, there is, I guess, reasons that I would do that are sort of like maybe with the reasons of like that are rooted in why I even want to do policing. Like it's like in there, it's like deeper in my heart on that. But actually, I do have something to say on this. I was recently asked. I had a trainer at my job, and they had asked me for an update, basically on my training. And one of the questions is what's your favorite thing about this job? What's your favorite thing about this position? And the first thing I thought was this. I said, protecting the associates, the customers, and the merchandise in the store overall. And that is the truth. That is the number one truth, because I've met so many customers where I know this is, again, back to simple things. They come to me and they'll actually be distraught. They'll actually be sad when they see the empty packages of people who've stolen. They'll really be sad. They're like, I could have gotten this for my grandson, or my sister was just looking for this, or this was the thing that I was craving so much. And people, they're like, we work so hard for our money and we put in so much time and effort. And when we see people that are just stealing, it's like we find that our efforts are meaningless, or that, like what we do to get the same things, someone is taking that from us, basically. And all of this is like, that's again kind of where, like, I said that, like, the answer to your question, like, is like, being motivated and like, vocal about these to get like connected ideas and stuff. Like, how does that relate to policing? Well, kind of, this is a little where it would come into, is that in policing, you kind of are bringing that for these, but this is all just on the level of a store. So it's like, it kind of goes together. It's sort of just how you look at it.
Wow. I think this sort of relates to, morality and like your personal quest for like meaning and purpose. And I think this is a perfect time to go into your second question, which is, what do you think your purpose is in life? And like, I think it's a good place to jump in, considering we're talking about, social justice and movements and policing and doing all that for the best reasons.
Very interesting that you make all those points at the same time, because a lot of people listening to this right now or hearing our words, they'd be thinking that, oh, those two ideas are completely opposite. Policing and social justice, nope, they don't go together. Like, that's what so many people are thinking right now. But that's another reason why I want to go into it, because we can show how the two things maybe that a lot of us find are the most separate are maybe not as separate as we think, depending on how we look at things. Could you repeat that question real quick for me, just a second?
I just segued from how you were talking about how it personally related to you and why you really deeply sort of wanted to go into this field. And I asked, what's your purpose in life, to sort of move on from that, because I think it's a good place to ask what your personal purpose in life you think is, in a more grand picture question, because I know these are all great things that you want to like do and make change, but on a big picture, you yourself, what do you think your purpose is, and what does that question even mean to you?
Can see it in a complex way and a simple way at the same time. Purpose for me can mean just living a stable and easygoing life, where I'm taken care of, and I find joy in just kind of simple things and try to keep to that. But at the same time, the opposite is also true, is that I really find it that my personal purpose in life, on top of that or within that, is really like, I have to pause here for a second, but it's just it's a very a deep question for me. I'm very glad to kind of meet. This must be such an interesting conversation. Um, I want to be happy and see that what would make someone happy is extremely, very, very deep into someone's heart and their mind, how they think. Um, but for me to be happy is like, I I don't know. It's like I want to be. I want there's adventure. There's sadness. There's hurt. There's pain. There's success. There's failure. There is a continuous flowing of your life of these things, and you're hoping to direct this in a certain way. I'm like, why would anything want to be alive? That's kind of why everything is alive in a certain way. Whether it's the bugs outside that were just born or whatever, like they're not speaking, but they just go about and they do what they do. And I'm like, I have a human version of that as well. They try to stay alive and do what they can to. And I'm like, I feel like I'm the same way, basically. Purpose, like that's such a deep question. Heck, I don't even know how to fucking answer that question. I'm sorry, I don't even want to answer that question.
I don't know. I do think it's interesting though. I feel like you're leaving, when you answered the question of purpose, you said you wanted to be happy, you wanted to, live a life with, simple pleasures, and then your complex answer, but none of that involved any of the stuff that you seem to be so passionate about, like the learning, like the way that you were talking about how in the next 5 years you really want to have a large journey of learning and growth, and your career in police work and security, and how you want to make all of this work in relation to like the benefit of people. I think there's a lot of stuff that I think you left out that I really do think is stuff that is the purpose in your life. You know what I mean? Like,
I guess it certainly depends on what I'm currently focusing on, because there are some things that might be even too personal for me to even mention at all. So that's why it's like I can go, I can say a lot about that topic, but then there's a lot of other things in my life, like there are things in my city even that are not related to the protests, but sort of related to the protests, that are like my meaning and my purpose, and everyone's like, oh, you need to stay away, oh, there's danger. I'm like, big risk, big reward. And they're like, you're fucking crazy. And I'm like, I know, that's why I can do this. And so it's like there is so many things that like putting myself into positions that people wouldn't even think of, like approaching basically investigating a camp that might have people at it who know certain things around the city that I have business with. And I'm like, this is what this is. And he's like, no, it's not. I'm like, your Facebook shows this is what your history is, and this is what I said you were. And it's like, the city is like, it's like, one thing I want to mention this is I used to really want to move around all the time. sometimes people they feel like if they move somewhere, they're going to change or to find a new perspective or something. I feel like one of my purposes really, or aspect of my purpose is like with my current life, staying in the same place, but approaching it different so that it keeps appearing that it's different. Like I've talked to a lot of people that they're like, there's nothing to do around here. I'm like, there's nothing to do around here because what you've decided is something that you can do. What is an actual approach is you only have a limited amount of that, and you've already taken all those options. But I'm like, what if I can keep changing that? So like things that are outside of what I talked about, career and everything, are like my personal pursuits. Like I want to know what basically the truth is. Like honestly, who isn't even in this call right now is that there are some people who I've spoken to honestly on here about a lot of topics that are my personal interests, and there are times even in this server that I'll come here all the time saying things like I don't know, but things about politics or things about religion or something, and all of that's like, that's not got anything to do with career or policing or anything. That's not got anything to do with that. But it's like, I guess when I think about where I want to be, like I think about it in where is my career going to take me, but inside that, it's like that's on the outside, like 5 years, like my career is like the cake, right? It's like the frosting and everything, but it's like a chocolate layered cake with like a truffle icing or something like on the inside, maybe with even like, I don't know, like chocolate chips or something. So it's like all detailed on the inside, right? So I feel like what makes me who I am, like really makes me who I am, is going to play out on top of that in its own way. So yeah, I guess that's why I answered like that, mostly about career.
Yeah, and I mean, I think all of that stuff that was like exciting to you in what you just said, like how you found a rabbit hole in your own city and like how you like to get into these topics here and all that stuff. I think all of that stuff is what brings us purpose, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's in a grander sense, maybe that's not your purpose in life, but you know, that definitely brings us personal fulfillment and purpose in that sense for sure, right?
Pretty much, that is quite literally how I see it as well. So
I think it's the truth. I think that's just the way it is, and that's the right way to interpret the scenario, the situation. So, moving on, in a bigger picture question, we have not touched this very much at all. I know you just mentioned politics, but I will ask you now, why do you like the government and what
yeah,
is the relation there?
it's okay. I wish NSA was here for this, but no. Um, I wanted to add that question for this interview because of the content that this server talks about all the time. This is just before I would really answer that question. This server specifically, the Roundtable, is a server where I have discussed conversations about not the United States governments, but global government ideas or governments from anyone else's country. This is a big topic that everyone in this server, I swear, has noted on in some fashion or thinks about. We're all here. I think that because this is a big, this has got to be something that's at the heart of almost every person in this server, from what I've seen. So, moving on. Why do I like the government? Why am I here? Why do I know I don't say, I sit here and I'm like, oh, I'm basically pursuing them. NSA is telling me, oh, they're killing people, they're evil, they're crazy, they're fucked up, they're in blah blah blah, and we know it all. And so it's like, why am I sitting here saying, oh man, they sound crazy, but I want to get along with them. Oh yes, I want to get along with them. And people are like, you are crazy. And so to be a little bit more serious about that is I feel like just like with what I did with the protests about how I was on the side of the cops and the side of the protesters, this is a question that is on a bigger level of the same thing basically. Why would I want to look at them as anything that is deserving of basically equal treatment, despite any of the negligent wrongdoings that are either known or unknown. And I sit here and I say it's very simple. It goes back to that purpose being simple and complex. This is simple as that they really, in a lot of ways, whatever is going on, whoever is there, there's so many people where they use these positions to identify with their own personal beliefs for their own personal ideas of justice or whatever, or things that they feel like they are doing good, that in a lot of ways, that even if they're fucked up in the head, they're exposed to all kinds of bad things, but a lot of times it's like there's a real person, there's a real something that's alive, underneath a lot of what otherwise might be terrible situations. And it's like I've come to find this in a lot of people. Like I've met people, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm a cop. Are you pro cop? Or like, I do this so that I can feed my kids or something. Or I do this because the intelligence agency thinks like I do. Or we know the same information or something, or certain traits that I have, only people like this understand. I think so deeply, or maybe I'm so narcissistic that only these people understand me, or that I'm ASPD or something, but I'm super intelligent at the same time, and I can't get along with people, but I can express myself by doing this extremely intricate global work, basically. And there are so many minds around here, and I don't want to sit here and say that all these people aren't worthy, and that because the mass of their actions are either wrong or bad, or by some people's perspectives, or even by serious accounts. It's like somewhere inside all of this, there is a real person and people, even if it's like a needle in the haystack, basically. Even so, it's like I want to basically say that why do I like them is that I'm gonna say that I'm gonna understand you, basically, and not sit here as 1 in 1 billion, or one, like, rather I'll sit here as 1 in a billion and say that despite this, I feel like you can be understood, and that these people should be understood, and that itself, the treatment of people like that, that's what's going to create the change that everyone bickers about all the time. We bicker about it, we can't change it. We're all frustrated. We're all bickering from different perspectives, but we're all frustrated at the same time about the same things, feeling the same ways, and saying these things from different perspectives. So it's all the same heart. And it's like seeing that is what would really cause, I think, change. Change is one thing I've come to say about in our city. We have this park in this very center of the city that is basically the root of all of our Lives Matter politics. And so there is a guy that I know who speaks with our Mayor Fisher, and he says change doesn't happen in the park; it happens in Louisville Metro Council. And I'm like, no, rephrase that. Change doesn't happen in the park; it happens in the heart. And I'm like, boom! Someone needs to chalk that all over the park now. So I hope that really kind of answers the question, though. If you have anything else to say, let me know.
That was amazing. I think that was a very high point. You're very well spoken. You've been very well spoken this whole interview. This is fantastic. I would love now, on this high point, I think this might be a good point to open it up to questions. If anyone has any questions, I'd love to open up the floor to ask Agent Bree here anything related to what we've talked about tonight or anything. But please keep it on topic, obviously. But if anyone would like to ask any questions at this point, go free ahead.
Yes, Agent Bree. It sounds like you're very involved with advocating and protesting for your chosen social cause. What has brought that out in you?
brought that out in me? Primarily, I think it's one thing about my upbringing about I was moved around a lot. So when I was moved to Louisville, I kind of like this was one of the first places where I really found like a sense of meaning, and in that I did a lot of self kind of education. I found, I did my own treasure hunt of information that led me to find that, I was attracted to these causes because of what they were believing and what beliefs they had for themselves. Basically, I have a lot of strong I care a lot about basically belief and free will and how people what people choose to think for and how people choose to think. So it's like, when I start seeing this, I'm like, oh, hey, people are doing the same kind of thing as me. Like, I got my own way of basically, like, showing this sense of, like, desire, like, for, like, having purpose or whatever. And I'm like, they have this too. And this is how I feel that I, can pretty much deeply connect with not only this cause but a majority of other causes, like what is it suicide prevention. Basically, we have a I don't know what the American Suicide Prevention something organization or whatever. Like, it's like we're kind of the same with them. They have a lot of that kind of spirit going on as well, and I got involved with them as well. So
Is there any other questions?
I've got one more. Yeah. What started you thinking about meaning in life, or the meaning of life?
very interesting question. I honestly think that when I actually moved out and I started like experiencing a life that I got to choose for myself, like I started seeing that even in the simplistic things, I could find a complex amount of meaning for the simplest of things, or find a simple, type of meaning for maybe even the most complex things. And it's like, once I got out of how I was raised or how I what I was raised into, it was like I started finding this whole other world that existed, and in that it was the simple things, like very simple things, like working with people or like being in certain situations that you may otherwise take for granted, like having people that you see all the time, like your family that you live with, or the people in your community or the people that you work with. And it's like, once I first got a job, or I first stayed in one location for the longest amount of time, I started realizing what these things were like. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is purpose to me. I'm like, this having these kinds of connections and relationships and all this, it's like this is what I've been seeking in everything that I've naturally as a person been pursuing. Like, even me being in this Discord right here is kind of a little like a digital version of the same thing. So, like, yeah, like what really started me to have purpose was literally doing things like this. Like, have I ever done this? No, I started this saying, oh, I've never done an AMA. I don't know that. But I'm sitting here and I've done it so far. And the act of doing this is just like, what does give me purpose? Like, I feel like that question is not fully answered because it's still continuing. Like, still continuing to this moment right now, like that, what gave me purpose, or how did I find purpose? It's still being found. It's like, how are you finding purpose currently? How are you finding purpose? Not how did you find? So I think that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you think
Thanks.
that purpose is like usually changing? Like, you have your primary purpose, which is your goal in life, and then you have secondary purpose, which is always changing from time to time.
Wait, can you? Hold on. I can barely hear you.
I think if never mind, try one more time, and if she still can't hear you, I'll just repeat your question. All right.
Do you think that the purpose is like you have your primary purpose, which is like your northern star, and you're going towards that purpose, but then there's secondary purpose where it's always changing, and you're always coming up with like new meaning in life, like you don't know like what it is. It's just like your present moment purpose. It changes.
Okay, so that's a good question. That's a very good question, actually. I think there's a reason you're actually asking that question. When we have a purpose, that's something we're achieving, like our primary purpose. That's like, okay, here's a good analogy. That's like you have a seed, you planted it, that's your purpose. And it's not like tomorrow it's not going to be sprouted in a wonderful flower. It's like there's going to be a process in between when, like, from where it is now and from when it sprouts. So like that whole time there, it's like you're going to have a secondary purpose. Like maybe you could even say that as you get towards that primary goal of yours, you're going to have smaller goals. You're going to actually have to have secondary goals that are going to come up all the time that might sometimes seem like they're not even like kind of focused on the primary goal, but honestly, unconsciously, if you're so strongly pursuing the primary goal, your secondary goals are probably going to reflect that, even if you don't fully realize that it is. Like your actions are going to do that. So I feel like it's kind of like it. I mean, maybe it could even be that you find that your secondary goal, it becomes more important over time than the first primary goal, and then that becomes your primary. And for some people it changes back and forth all the time, or maybe it doesn't, and the second choice is kind of like fragments of what would lead to the first choice being like completed. So I think that's a question that very much depends on the person.
Another problem though is that like you follow a wrong path. You have a purpose and you end up going the wrong way, and realize that you didn't want that the whole time. And how do you like reconcile that?
You'd have to in the moment probably change what you expected your primary goal to be. And actually, it's not that you would change it, it's that you would say that wherever you are now is going to, if that's still your goal, and even though it wasn't what you thought it would be, that's still your goal. Like, I wish I could have a better analogy for this, but like, no, it's like, I feel like you might still have it, but it's like maybe you feel like, if you didn't get what you originally thought you were going to get, it's like maybe only in this season it's like that, because I'm sure at some point you might even like it might slowly start happening, and like what you originally wanted, and you weren't even pursuing it and it's starting to happen. But when you tried all this time, to actually get what you wanted, you could never obtain it. But then once you had a whole new goal, a whole new something else that maybe wasn't what you thought, at some point it like leads back to the thing that you originally wanted, and you didn't even try to seek it. I've ran into that on smaller levels, but not on bigger levels. So I feel like you'd really have to change your you there's something I follow by, and it's like, if you can't change the situation, change how you feel towards the situation, because that's going to change how you see the situation and respond to it. You might even be able to look at what you find yourself in as another stepping stone to the thing that you're actually seeking. And you're like, well, maybe if I can't get through this, then shit, I could never have what I originally wanted anyway. So it's like, it's a reflection of who you are. Like wherever you end up is a reflection of you. And I know that. I say that because I know that. That's how I've come to know myself.
Did somebody else have a question? I saw somebody just unmuted.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Roy Joe, did you have a question you want to ask? No. All right. Well, If you have a question, you can go ahead. Okay. All right, Agent Bree, this was amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. I had a wonderful time. I think we went over some great stuff. This is going to be a great recording. I'll give it back to you if you have anything else, any final word you'd like to say.
Yes, I would actually. Thank you for that. My perspective here, like every single one of us, I think, we have our own way of seeing things based on the things that we've been exposed to make us who we are today. But I think the predominant thing that exists within all of us, regardless of that, is that, kind of like we're all following some kind of pursuit that's for our highest good, that we've declared is for our highest good in a number of ways. Or even if we feel that someone else did for us. Like, I feel like I think very, 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 very deeply about some things, and all of you guys in this server have really helped to expose me to things and help me to even express things. And like a lot of you here, actually low key, this is all digital, and I think we all can feel from this, but you have literally changed my life in certain ways. Like I go out into the world and I do things differently sometimes based on the things I've heard from people here, and it really does make a difference. It's like sometimes we like to say that, our life online isn't your real life, but how that makes you change, how that makes you feel, kind of is your real life. So this is just like, I just appreciate all of you being here and just kind of listening to me and hearing me out and just kind of being present. And I hope to actually do the same back with you guys while participating in this server. So thank you.
Well, I can speak for everybody on this occasion for sure that we appreciate you very much. I will say you are definitely very insightful and deep and very smart, and you're definitely very good at articulating your feelings, and I really appreciate you doing this. I think it came out very well. I definitely think a lot of people are going to like this. So yeah, I think we are finished up. If you are watching this on our YouTube live, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. The affiliate links for our stuff will be in the description of that. That's our BitChute, our Teespring, our Twitch, and obviously our Discord, our Roundtable Discord, where everything happens. Nightly, nearly podcast, less so with Shogun being MIA. But yeah, please come check us out. And on behalf of everyone, thank you, Agent Bree, for doing this. And with that, Neverborn, you can end the recording and stream it on Twitch.